Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kate Lauman, social media consultant for SSM Health. Thank you for joining us today for our wellness webinar featuring SSM dietitian Jennifer Moffett. This is the first topic in our wellness webinar series that our human resources team will host throughout the year to provide you with information to make your life healthier. Today, Jennifer is going to give us some great information about eating your way to better health, and we do want to hear from you today throughout the wellness webinar. If you have any questions that you would like Jennifer to answer, you can email them. We did set up an email for the webinar. That email address is askssm@ssmhc.com. Jennifer, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Kate. I'm glad to be here to share some nutrition tips to help us build a healthy lifestyle.
You really do have some great information, so go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Today we're going to talk about how to bite into a healthy lifestyle. And that's the theme for this year's National Nutrition Month, March of 2015, from the American Dietetic Association. And that is a good resource organization for both professional staff and general consumers. We can learn to make some informed choices with the resources that we have and hopefully consume a few less calories, especially if we're trying to manage weight or take off a few extra pounds. And building that healthy lifestyle does start with sound eating habits and some extra physical activity or exercise too. To bite into that healthy lifestyle, it's best that we can achieve and maintain a healthy weight. The challenge is in maintaining that healthy weight when we arrive at that goal, and part of that is knowing what should my goal weight be. When people look up the body mass index charts, the normal weight would be 18.5 to 25. If we're looking at an insurance height weight table, typically someone like a 5'4" tall woman should weigh 120 plus or minus 10% for frame size, or perhaps a man 5'10", about 166 pounds plus or minus 10% for frame size. And those are ideal numbers. Someone that's very physically active, has a lot of muscle, they will probably weigh much more than the ideal charts would say. When we get closer to those goal weights and reduce obesity, we're also reducing risk of chronic diseases, things like diabetes, hypertension, and in general promoting overall good health. Part of our guidelines come from the USDA MyPlate. Those are dietary guidelines for Americans. The USDA stands for the United States Department of Agriculture, and this logo that you see, the picture of the plate, replaced the older food guide pyramid back in 2011. I think the MyPlate has been well received. It's a little easier to understand for most consumers, and it gives us guidelines that at least half of that plate should be fruits and vegetables. A quarter of the plate, lean protein, and that final quarter of the plate, whole grains. Our entire day should be composed of at least half of our grains being whole in form, such as oatmeal, barley, or 100% whole wheat bread. And don't forget that calcium. We see that blue dairy symbol to the side of the plate. We need to include things like skim or 1% milk or low-fat yogurt for calcium. Why do we need more fruits and vegetables? Probably someone's mom has suggested eat your vegetables at the dinner table when you were growing up. Those fruits and vegetables contribute great vitamins and lots of minerals to help our diet be healthy. It does carry many antioxidants in the colorful fruits and vegetables that you see here on this slide, and those can help reduce the risks of some chronic diseases. And fruits and vegetables are low in calories and high in water content, so they're also very filling too. Why more fruits and vegetables? Why not that they're convenient? Most people need something fast and easy. To grab a piece of fruit or a vegetable, whether it's fresh, frozen, canned, or dried, is very convenient. Those fruits and vegetables, because of their fiber, help you feel full. They will then help delay hunger so that you don't feel like you need to eat as soon. And they're a quick snack, easy to grab a piece of fruit and run out the door to your next activity. Just the facts means we should be looking at nutrition facts labels. And I do see more and more people reading those labels at the grocery store. It might take a little longer to shop, but the first thing that they should be looking at in that label is the serving size, because most of us make an assumption that the entire package is the serving size, where there might be multiple servings in that container. In our whole day, our protein intake should be about 20% of our calories. So if I were eating a 1,500 calorie a day diet, my protein intake should be about 75 grams for the day. Carbohydrates should average in the range of about 45 to 50% of our total calories. And fats should be about 30% or less. If I were following a 1,500 calorie plan, I would try to stay under 50 grams of total fat a day. The saturated fat in our diet comes from those animal sources, things like the bacon on your plate next to those eggs. We really need to cut back on saturated fat to less than 10% of our calories. For some people, that means if they ordered the cheeseburger at the local fast food restaurant, they've exceeded their saturated fat for the day in just that one sandwich. And we need to limit trans fats, which are the partially hydrogenated oils that you'll see those terms on some ingredient labels. Keep total fat low, less than 30% of calories. Cholesterol is not the buzzword for heart disease that it used to be. Current evidence is showing that the cholesterol in our diet is not as negative an impact on our heart health as it used to be, so that means people can feel comfortable eating more eggs in their day. Watch out for sodium. Don't ask for that salt shaker, because most of us use way too much salt added to foods or in convenience foods. The Heart Association has general recommendations. We should probably eat less than 2,300 to 2,400 milligrams of sodium a day. In household measures, that's about a teaspoon of salt. Yet 1,500 milligrams a day is our limit if we're over 51 years old, if we have known hypertension, or if we've been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, diabetes, or are African American. And that makes it tough to limit that sodium to those lower levels. It's a challenge. Again, most people don't eat enough fiber in their day either. Our recommendations should be to try to take in about 20 to 30 grams of fiber across the day with whole grains, fruits and vegetables, dried beans and peas, foods like that. And our water intake should be about 64 ounces per day, or about half a gallon, to have enough fluid on board. Hydrate well, because the majority of our body, 60–65% of our bodies, are composed of water. The water in our bodies helps to transport those nutrients from that healthy diet that we're eating. The water that we drink also helps control appetite, promote a feeling of fullness, and flush out waste products from our digestion. Fluid balance is important because if we become dehydrated, it can impair your physical performance either at work or in exercise and lead to possible health problems. Yet to build back that fluid and rehydrate doesn't happen immediately. Sometimes it takes a little time to recover if we've let ourselves get dehydrated. Flavored waters as an item to drink to replace fluid losses can sometimes be a concern because some of the flavored waters have a lot of sugar content or perhaps some questionable claims that they offer vitality or more energy. What's the trend? Well, greater than 60% of adults in America are overweight or obese. And in our children, we're seeing more of a trend in childhood obesity also. 1 in 3 children. Know that we've made good progress with childhood obesity by initiatives such as the Let's Move campaign that First Lady Michelle Obama initiated back in 2010. It's been successfully going now for 5 years. And we want to make sure that chronic health problems are reduced with that weight loss. They usually go hand in hand. And when we have those chronic health problems, it also runs up the costs to cover that health care. How does that happen? Well, there are so many factors that contribute to gaining weight or carrying extra body weight. Working longer hours. Sometimes that makes it very difficult to have the time in your day to plan physical activity. But we should definitely budget time for exercise. So not having much exercise lessens our calorie burn, contributes to some weight gain. Too often, if we worked a long day, we don't have time to fix a healthy meal at home, and maybe we're grabbing a fast food meal at the local restaurant that may be really high in calories, fat, or sodium. Lifestyles, the couch potato syndrome. When we come home, sometimes folks are so exhausted from their day, they really just want to sit and relax, and they're not burning any further calories, and sometimes eating their larger meal later in the day. Family influences can be part of this too, in that perhaps everyone in the household likes to get their favorite snack and then sit down on the couch to watch their favorite evening television show. And social situations can contribute when people are very social with parties and holidays and eating more treats with those. What can I do? Well, one thing that everyone can do is to check serving sizes on packages so that we're eating the right portions of foods. And what helps is when we've shopped to divide food into individual single-serve bags to control the portions. They're quick to grab, perhaps to put in a lunchbox then. If we're having a snack at home, to use a small bowl instead of eating from the whole bag. And when it comes to dinner time, putting your food on your individual plate and perhaps serving from the stove rather than putting the food on the table in large family-style bowls where it's very tempting to take that second or third helping. Eating out at restaurants, portions are huge. It's always a good idea to get a to-go box and portion a good part of that meal, perhaps even half of it, into that to-go box, and that can be lunch tomorrow or shared with someone else at home. Here in the SSM cafeterias, we have the green apple emblem indicating items that are mindful and healthier, and also that folks can scan for MyFitnessPal to add foods into their daily journal. Grocery shop wisely, because if I don't take a list, I'm probably going to purchase things that are tempting or that I don't need, and I may forget something essential that I wanted. So I will make less extra trips to the store if I shop from my list, and I'll be less likely to do those impulse purchases. Reduce waste with having a grocery list, because sometimes we buy too much of a perishable item that we can't use fast enough and it goes bad on us. And think about ways to use leftovers in another dish so that we're not throwing food out and spending money on it. Avoid shopping when you're hungry, because everything wants to go in that shopping cart. It all looks so good if you're shopping hungry, so perhaps eat before you go. Aisle by aisle, I see people checking those expiration dates at the store because groceries are expensive enough. We don't want to buy something that's of lesser quality or perhaps will make us sick if it's past its expiration date. Do make an effort to stock up on staples that don't spoil quickly, because we can keep those for a while and incorporate those staples into other recipes. Be flexible for weekly sales and specials at your store, and purchase less of those convenience foods because they are going to be higher in salt and perhaps built-in fats. Many folks like to compare name brands versus store brands against the coupons that they may have too, because you can have just as good a quality and taste from a lesser expensive store brand than the name brand version of an item. Limit soft drinks, sugared sodas, fancy coffees with sugared syrups and whipped creams, and sugary beverages that add empty calories to your day. Watch out for the snack attack. Have a plan if you know that you tend to want to snack at a certain time of day so that you can have a healthier item available. And be aware of checkout temptations. What we see at the checkout as we're putting our food on the belt often aren't very healthy. Be aware of your eating behaviors, and sometimes keeping a food journal does help that. It helps us identify, are we a snacker? And if we do snack, what are we selecting? Watch out for, do I eat during screen time, which means cruising the internet, working on the computer, whether it's at work or at home, or having that snack when we have our favorite television time. Be aware of those trends. And watch out for, do I work in physical activity or have I neglected it? More than planning, that's a big first step, but plan for some exercise and then actually budget the time for what you plan to do, whether it's at the gym or whether it's at home, and how much time you have to spend exercising. Where's the heat when I'm burning calories? The majority of the calories that we burn are just to keep our basal metabolic rate, our organs, our heart and lungs, for instance, working. That's 60% of our daily calories. 30% of our calories are burned with non-exercise activities. For instance, that toe tapping that your office mate does under the desk is burning a few calories. And we even burn a few calories, about 10%, with just the heat involved in digesting the food that we've eaten. Physical activity is an integral part of weight management. Yes, we can lose weight if we're overweight and trying to take off a few pounds with watching our calories, but we also want to strengthen our muscles and bones with some exercise. It's an integral, most important part of weight management. Incorporate some exercise into everyday activities. We may not have a gym membership, but we can take the stairs instead of the elevator. We could park the car farther out rather than looking for the closest space. It's good to plan that recreation, whether you belong to a gym or whether you're just scheduling activities with family members and friends, something like a group bike ride. Calories that we burn will vary depending on things like our body weight, how hard we're working, the intensity of our exercise, and how long we're exercising. And we have examples here. If a person weighs 130 pounds and they're bowling for an hour, they'll burn about 177 calories. Yet if they were running a 10-minute mile, of course, they're going to burn a lot more calories, about 590 across that hour. We need to focus on good changes. Balance calories to manage our weight. If we eat more calories than we need, of course, we see some weight gain on the scale. If we take in less calories than what we typically eat, we'll notice some gradual weight loss. We can make some small changes by reducing sugared beverages, reducing solid fats, and using more healthy liquid oils at room temperature, staying away from as many refined, simple grains and starches, like white bread, for instance, and not using the salt shaker, but using other spices to flavor our foods. Try to increase nutrient-dense foods. Those would be examples like eating an apple versus having a fruit roll-up. And to build, in general, healthy eating patterns across the day and across the week so that we can hopefully live long and prosper. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much. We're already getting a lot of questions in. Let's get to this first question. The question is, how do I curb my appetite in the afternoon and right when I get home from work? This person says they have a sit-down job all day. They recently gave up gluten and bread products, but they still would like to lose 20 pounds. That weight, though, isn't budging. I'm an active 49-year-old male. Any help would be appreciated as I am frustrated and very close to going on an appetite suppressant. Jennifer?
Well, those are all typical frustrations that many people have when they're trying to manage their weight. Sometimes people aren't perhaps eating as much protein as they could, which protein does have a good satiety value, keeps us feeling full longer, or when they do have a snack, that snack should also include a small amount of protein to keep them feeling satisfied longer on less food. We can use some low-calorie items too, like having good fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables ready at hand for that snack rather than picking up something that would be less healthy.
This next question says, I'm interested in eating a diet to reduce inflammation and am confused by all the information out there because some of it's conflicting. Could you point me in the direction of some good information regarding the topic or offer some advice?
There are many studies that we hear about and read about, and yes, even when you read studies that compare to other research that's done, it can be conflicting evidence and conflicting results. I would say one of the best things to do is to compare some of the known resources, things like the American Heart Association, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the American Diabetes Association, and some of those resources have excellent tools and excellent handouts, good reference information that can help people make decisions. And then again, if people have questions and are concerned about conflicting or contradictory information from something they've heard on the news or read, that they should also ask their healthcare provider to evaluate that information and give them a heads up.
Absolutely. Our next question, what's the recommended amount of protein per day for a moderately active woman?
Protein recommendations are about 1 gram per kilogram of ideal body weight, or if we were talking not kilograms but pounds, about half of your weight in pounds would be your protein intake for the day. The example that I mentioned in our webinar was 120-pound person, 150-pound person would be in the range of 60 to 75 grams of protein. And that would be a good fair amount. That protein intake does sometimes, I think, help people with weight management because it does rev their metabolism a bit, and they'll burn those calories well and feel satisfied doing it too.
What is the current thinking about sugar substitutes? This person writing in saying their biggest weakness when it comes to sugar substitutes is their morning cappuccino because they find themselves putting so much sugar substitute in that drink.
The sugar substitutes are basically calorie-free, so they won't contribute calories to our day. They do help satisfy that sweet tooth in place of things that would be contributing notable calories. They don't promote a rise in blood sugar levels, which is important for some people, especially diabetics. There are those folks, though, that think that the more artificial sweeteners that they consume, the more they feel a craving or a drive to have those sweet flavors. So they need to evaluate that. But they are calorie-free, and they do hold a place in the diet for not increasing your calorie intake.
All right, another question. Which is better, butter or margarine?
That debate has been around for a long time. Butter is an animal fat, contains saturated fats, and there are those people that say, well, you know, the margarines have the trans fats, and those are something we should really, really limit to as little as possible. Trans fat is a nice, healthy oil at room temperature that is partially hydrogenated when we see those words on labels, and it then becomes more of a solid fat. So margarine would be healthier than butter if we're watching saturated fat, as long as that margarine contains no trans fats.
Our next question, does increasing muscle mass increase the amount of fat you burn at rest?
Increasing muscle mass in general will help to rev metabolism and burn calories in general. We can't always select where those calories come from. For instance, when people have specific body areas that they would like to change the dimensions on, it would be wonderful if we could say, well, I'm going to take fat tissue from this area or that area in my body, but it's an overall calorie burn when we increase protein, and it does help. And when we exercise, that'll be an overall calorie burn.
What do we look for in an ingredient list to find out if that food contains those whole grains that you were talking about in your presentation?
Mm-hmm. In an ingredient list, generally those items are listed from the most or the highest weight item to the least amount in that product. So we're looking for words like 100% whole wheat, for instance, not just wheat grain, because that could be also some added brown food coloring and not necessarily the entire whole grain, which is composed of the bran and the endosperm and all portions of that grain product.
So, all right, so it'll actually say 100% whole wheat.
That's the best. And you'll sometimes also see a whole grain stamp symbol on those products.
This next question says, heart disease and high blood pressure run in my family. Can you advise what top foods to avoid with high blood pressure?
With high blood pressure or hypertension, we always target limiting that sodium intake because that, for many people, directly drives up their blood pressure. So that means I have to do more scratch cooking and fresh ingredients, less convenience foods. So staying out of the aisles in the grocery store where things like canned soups, pickles, TV dinners, salt-cured meats, for instance, need to be limited. Ham, sausages, lunch meats, and those types of convenience foods too.
A similar question, does drinking coffee contribute to hypertension?
Some people are very sensitive to caffeine. If that coffee is regular coffee that contains caffeine, for some people they notice a rise in their blood pressure or their heart rate, and they are very sensitive, so it can contribute.
With foods being so expensive, how do you know whether you need to toss out a certain item? Is it more important to go by that expiration date or the use by date? Especially talking about something like eggs, anything we can use safely past those dates?
Use by dates are generally a recommendation, and I would always follow the expiration date. If it's past the expiration date, I'm going to toss it.
And that use by date, though, is more a recommendation. If
more of a recommendation for general quality and taste.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Next question coming in. I'm trying to limit my carbs, both in an effort to lose weight, but also in an attempt to follow a more diabetic-friendly lifestyle. First, this person wants to know how many carbs daily would help me reach both of those goals. And then the second part of the question, I was wondering how many fruit servings a day would be considered okay for both weight loss and then for someone in a diabetic program.
Diabetic programs in general are approached as a consistent carbohydrate type of diet, and we can calculate calorie plans for people depending on their current weight and height. But in general, those carbs, diabetic diet will calculate anywhere from 45 to 50% of the total calories coming from carbohydrates. As far as those numbers of servings at a meal and actual food, many times the mid-range of calories, let's say 1,500 to 1,800 calories, those folks could be having 3 to 4 carbohydrate choices at a meal, which could be a fruit, could be a starch, it could also be a dairy product. So they can play with that and substitute. If an individual wants more fruits at a meal, they could have a fruit at every meal. They could have vegetables, lunch and dinner. They could have 2 or 3 starches at every meal and still manage their blood sugars and their weight.
Next question, could you tell me what the target heart rate is for weight loss for a man who's 45 years old, 5'8", about 200 pounds?
In general, there are calculations out for target heart rates, but we can usually figure 220 minus your age, and then to take a range of that number, multiply by 65 to 85%, with the high end being 85%. As people get older, they don't need to reach as high of a target heart rate to get cardiopulmonary benefit.
All right, let's talk about kids for a moment. What are some of the trends you're seeing, and any advice for parents to get those kids to eat healthier?
I think we can do many things to get kids to eat healthier. Always have some quick to grab, as we mentioned in our webinar, fruits and vegetables, rather than bringing in the house snack cakes and cookies. It's good to involve those kids also in planning that shopping list, so that you can allow them to have maybe one treat item and maybe lead them toward a healthier treat item. But getting their involvement, having them use the coupons to find those items in the store, but planning the family meals is a big part of that, I think.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that involvement really goes a long way.
Yes.
A viewer writes in, I need some help reading nutrition labels correctly. Any advice or even online tools?
Nutrition labels, no doubt. I think they're very busy and they can be confusing. And there are some new guidelines that you may have read about coming out regarding the sugars on labels, where probably in 2017 we'll see another line on the label below sugars indicating added sugars. I generally tell individuals not to worry about the percents that that item is providing, because those are based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet, and many people don't eat or don't need to eat 2,000 calories a day. So I always start with what's the serving size, how many servings are in the package, and then keeping some basic guidelines in mind. Total sugars maybe less than 10 grams is a nice ballpark, and keeping total fat for that one serving size perhaps less than 5 grams, particularly for cardiac patients and those watching their heart health. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. A viewer writes in saying, I recently read that you should use 3 tablespoons of avocado oil a day to flatten your belly. Any truth to that?
I don't think there's any truth to that. Avocado oils, the fats that we get from avocados are very healthy. It's a monounsaturated fat, but no healthy oil, whether it's avocado or any other type of healthy oil, such as olive or canola, will target any one particular body part. Do we need some healthy oils in our day? Sure we do, for hormone activity and to absorb fat-soluble vitamins better. We do have to be aware, though, that if a little bit is good, a lot may not be any better, in that it's going to provide a great deal of calories.
Absolutely. Does artificial sweetener, can it worsen joint inflammation?
Some people are very sensitive to artificial sweeteners, and I would say those folks that do have pain in their joints are usually because they may have a history of arthritis, or because they've been carrying a lot of extra weight for years that has worn those joints. And some people do tell me they're sensitive to artificial sweeteners, but I have had a few say they notice it in their joints. Usually what I hear from people is they may say that artificial sweeteners sometimes contribute to having a headache for them, but not directly to their joints.
There's been a lot of talk lately about belly fat. It's been in the media a lot lately and how harmful that fat is. Are there specific foods that contribute to that belly fat, or is it just kind of an overall lifestyle that causes that to occur?
I think you hit the nail on the head there with the overall lifestyle, and I think we've all seen some of those pop-ups when we're on the internet about belly fat, and if you look at some of the popular magazines near the checkout or at the bookstore, you'll see so many of the magazine articles targeting, especially in the springtime, belly fat. But that's just the genetics of how certain people tend to deposit their fat. Some people carry more of their fat in the abdominal area. Some carry more of their extra weight or their fat tissue in more their hips and legs. So there really isn't any one food that will decrease that. I wish it were that simple.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah.
Well, since January, this viewer writes in saying that they've been eating healthy, possibly a New Year's resolution, lots of vegetables, soy milk, whole grains, and lean protein, but her problem is bloating. She says she thought her belly would actually be flatter by now, but the eating better has kind of actually caused the opposite with the bloating. Any advice you could give her?
It's possible that what this individual is experiencing is perhaps an increase in fiber intake in their diet, which can create a little bit of bloat if we increase fiber too quickly. We want to always be sure we're taking in plenty of fluid that goes hand in hand with fiber. Those good healthy food choices sometimes take a while to show their benefit. So I can't say that I would directly relate those healthy food choices to why is my stomach not flatter. Exercise definitely is part of that equation. Is this individual also exercising? Because we can strengthen those underlying muscles that then add to better posture and perhaps lesser tummy bloat.
Assuming someone's getting the proper amount of nutrients, carbs, proteins, vitamins, etc., and limits their total intake of calories to approximately their total daily energy expenditure, does it matter where those calories are coming from?
We like a nice balance, some moderation in what we're eating. In general, no. If our calorie intake is less than our estimated needs, regardless of whether those are carbs, protein, or fat, we should still lose weight. Do we want a nice balance where we have a good amount of protein, a medium amount of carbohydrates, and very limited amounts of fats? Sure, to have a nice balance in that respect. But less calories than we need, we'll lose weight regardless.
The viewer writes in saying, I'm in the process of making better food choices. I want to lose 20 pounds by June and would like some food recommendations for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Any advice for how to prepare these healthy meals or making meals healthier?
In making meals healthier and aiming, that's an aggressive weight loss by June, but hopefully we'll be successful with that. Limiting portions, sometimes people do better if they select an item that's already prepared for one meal a day. Many people at work will grab a frozen meal that, yes, they're high in sodium, but they're portion controlled automatically if they don't really have the time at home to prepare that lunchbox. If they can limit their meals to, I'll say for a general female, maybe 400 or 500 calories to a meal, then in that whole day we've kept a lid on that calorie intake. And ramping up the exercise definitely helps. Making sure that we've got protein at all those meals, that definitely helps. And then we have meal plans that the dietitians here are always willing to give people sample menus and meal plans to help really structure that day and to balance those calories from each of the food groups a little more evenly.
Those are very helpful, that's for sure. Jennifer, our viewers want to know if you recommend cleanses or fasting periodically.
I do not recommend cleanses or fasting. Many people have a health history that would contradict that or be even dangerous. And it's just a very short-term, very severely calorie-limited day that is not going to support their good nutrition, especially if it's done for any extended period of time. I mean, we have some medically managed, very low-calorie liquid plans, but those are being medically managed by physicians, and Many of these cleanse diets are done by people on their own without supervision.
A viewer writes in saying, I find that some foods more than others contribute to excess gas. Are there certain foods I should avoid?
That is generally tied to some of the vegetable categories that are really good for us, and we kind of have to build our tolerance, but those are the cruciferous vegetables that can contribute to gas, such as broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, onions, vegetables in those categories. So they're good for us, but they can contribute to having some gas.
If you're recovering from the flu or a cold, is it better to exercise or wait until you feel better?
Definitely, we don't generally recommend exercising if you're running a temperature, but that exercise is great to expand the lungs. I think it helps to enhance our immune function so that we get over that cold a little faster. We may not feel as much energy when we're a little under the weather, but it's good to breathe hard and expand those lungs with some cardio exercise.
But not with the fever?
Not with a fever.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to lose weight. I'm diabetic. I just started a low-carb diet, and I'm taking an appetite suppressant and limiting carbs to 100 grams daily. This viewer wants to know, is that too low? Also says I haven't had fruits in a while either. Am I missing out on important nutrients?
I would say fruits do contribute important nutrients, and we want to include fruits. We shouldn't exclude any one food group. I think her numbers sound acceptable. That 100 grams of carb is definitely acceptable, and she should see success with that, but she can definitely incorporate some fruit. And even one fruit serving is only 15 grams of carbohydrate, so she can incorporate fruits into the day and still have success.
All right, good to know. What are some of your tips for late night binge eating? A viewer writes in saying, I eat healthy throughout the day, but there's a lot of times that I find myself having a craving for peanut butter or something sweet or other high-fat foods right before bed.
That's a problem many of us fight, and I can tell you that sometimes those individuals aren't really hungry. It's just a habit that they have to one little snack before bedtime, and those types of habits are challenging to change. Physically, perhaps they didn't eat enough protein at their evening meal, and they digested the carbs in that meal very quickly. So if they increase the protein at that supper meal, that can maybe help get them into bed without having the need for that evening snack. That can be part of it. Or to plan just a light protein snack before going to bed without binging or going to excess on the portion size.
A viewer writes in saying there are so many diet supplements advertised on TV. What are your thoughts on taking any of these supplements, good or bad?
I think most of us don't need extra vitamin supplements unless we have an extenuating healthcare situation. Let's say someone who is expecting a baby, they need extra vitamins. People that have weight loss surgeries need extra vitamins because they're eating such a small amount of food. But for the general public, they should be able to reach their nutritional needs in their 3 meals and any planned snacks that they have without needing a supplement.
And the nutrients are better coming from those real foods as opposed to a supplement, correct?
Always better to get the nutrients from healthy whole foods rather than in a pill or a capsule. Yes.
Another hot topic talked about a lot lately, is it better to cook with olive oil, canola oil, or coconut oil? And are those the healthiest oils to use?
Olive and canola oil are definitely very healthy oils to use. I know there's been a lot of buzz about the coconut products. I think it started with the coconut waters because they have some electrolytes like potassium and sodium, which really you're paying high price for something that basic water could provide the same benefit, or even low sugar or low calorie sports drink. As far as the oils, coconut oil will be more saturated, so almost more like an animal fat. The fats in coconut oil are composed mostly of what's called MCTs, or medium chain triglycerides. So they're not as cholesterol elevating as you would think with bacon or butter, or those animal fats. We do not want to fry a lot of our foods, though, because water that's in the food that we fry can change a nice, healthy oil like canola or olive into more of a trans fat and a saturated fat that's not good for our cholesterol or our heart health.
A viewer writing in saying, I have celiac disease, so they're wondering if you have any recommendations for gluten-free options or general gluten-free advice.
Many people follow a gluten-free diet. It's also been very popular in recent years. But individuals have a very restricted diet if they're following gluten-free and haven't truly been diagnosed having celiac disease. It's wonderful, all the references that we're seeing in professional literature, and you notice it at the store too, I'm sure, all these gluten-free products. So there's so much more choices for those folks that do need to limit their gluten. So many more choices, and it makes it easier for them.
Another question coming in saying, I have a genuine addiction to caffeine, especially diet soda, and experience awful withdrawals when I try to quit. Aside from the headaches and fatigue, this person also becomes nauseous and has body aches. Is there a better way to quit caffeine, or a supplement or a food that can ease those symptoms? This person drinks about 128 ounces of a diet cola drink a day.
That's a large amount of caffeine, and most people would say that in being aware that they need to limit caffeine, or their just simple desire to limit caffeine, that they cannot cut it off cold turkey, or they do have physical symptoms. Most people complain of bad headaches if they reduce caffeine too quickly, so that's something that this individual needs to wean back gradually. Some people will try to have every other drink be caffeine-free to kind of ease into that, so that hopefully they won't experience those painful symptoms.
In talking about drinks, obviously water is best for us, but what are some healthy drinks that people can have and still stick to a healthy diet?
So many people rely on the calorie-free flavoring additives. Things, name brand wise, there are generic versions, but things like the Mio drops, the Dasani drops, Crystal Light, sugar-free Kool-Aid, sugar-free Hawaiian Punch. Yes, those things are all artificially sweetened, but sometimes people are more likely to drink adequate fluid intake if they're not bored with plain water and it has a little bit of flavor but provides no calories. So those things are all fair options, or some of the already bottled products like the Sobe Zero Calorie or the Zero Calorie Vitamin Water. Those things are all fine.
Yeah, and sometimes even just infusing regular water with some fruit spices it up a little bit too, I've seen.
We often see that in hotel lobbies where they'll float cucumber slices or orange slices in water.
Yeah, have your own spa day.
Yeah.
A question coming in, do you know about the recommendations for daily protein and how they change with age? Do seniors need more or less protein daily than maybe someone a little younger?
Mm-hmm. Seniors do need a good protein intake, but one thing to keep in mind is that many times with the senior population, they do have muscle wasting due to lack of activity or ability to walk and exercise as much as when they were younger. They call that sarcopenia, when they lose some of that muscle mass. But increasing a huge amount of protein isn't necessarily going to directly help them build muscles. Many times those seniors have modified kidney function, and super high amounts of protein would not be advisable for them. So the same general recommendations would apply for seniors, not to excess, but perhaps just a little bit less than when they were younger.
Okay, great. For breakfast smoothies, someone who is avoiding dairy, any things that they can substitute for yogurt to make a healthy breakfast smoothie?
There are many smoothie recipes, and we have so many kitchen chemists among people that we talk to that just love to keep adding some wonderful fruits and vegetables to their smoothies. Just to be aware, one caution that I give to folks is know that those vegetables that we add, and even the fruits, don't provide a great deal of calories. But as we keep adding ingredients, we are running up the calorie ticket, and perhaps the carbs, if there's honey or lots of fruits in there. A lot of folks make that smoothie better by adding a little protein powder to it, and that also sticks to your ribs and keeps you feeling full a little bit longer. That makes a pretty good smoothie, and there's tons of recipes out there on the net.
That's great. What are some of your favorite go-to websites or tools for whether it is healthy eating recipes, tips? If someone wants to get some more information, where would you recommend that they seek out that information?
The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, eatright.org, is a great resource, and I many times go, as I mentioned earlier, to the Heart Association website or the Diabetes Association. Produce for Better Health has some good information, and those are some very good sources.
That's great. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to share with us this really important information. Anything else that you want to let the viewers know about, or anything you want to wrap with?
Just know that if you have questions, as we had some great questions today.
We really did.
Yes, I really appreciate those. That anyone can call the dietitians, set up an appointment. Some people want a little more time, and we can sit down and make that one-on-one appointment with them so that we can give them a personalized plan to follow and answer any questions that come up. And we're always willing to answer those phone questions too.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And thanks to everyone who watched today. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.